All right, we are live for the first episode of the Ohio Outdoors podcast after a long-awaited trial and error session of getting ourselves up and running. We finally got our wings beneath us, and we're ready to launch this thing. And so, when we were talking about what is it that this podcast is going to be about, we really wanted to lean into the essence of the forum, which we've touted as a virtual campfire all these years. We're 10 years running. Lots of great stories on the forum, lots of great information. It's all about the quality exchange of quality information. And that this podcast is aimed to be exactly that. So I'm here tonight with my co-host and co-owner, Joe Wilson. You guys on the forum know him as Jackalope. You'll recognize me as Bowhunter 1023. So for those of you that are old familiar faces around the forum, you'll recognize those screen names. If you're new and you're just finding us on the podcast, please go over to TheOhioOutdoors.com and join us there. But what we want to do in episode 1 is set the stage for, what we hope is a long storied history of the podcast. And part of that is going to be those great stories. And one of my favorites is how we got to be. And the conversation that I had with Joe one night standing outside in the driveway, just saying, you know what, we should do this. And so there's a good story behind who we are and how we came to be. And I don't think there's anybody else better than to set the stage for that than Joe. I mean, he's the one that picked up the phone and called me that night and planted the idea and said, what do you think about this? And here we sit. It's time to turn it loose on a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, Jesse. It is. It's definitely been a journey over the past 10 years. Really glad that we came together and we kind of kicked off that forum online. Back when it initially started, I don't think it's any secret, right? We're not the only online forum in Ohio. 10 years later, we might as well be because all the traffic, all the members, pretty much. If you look at post counts across the board, we're just crushing it, right? And I think that's really a testament to the vision kind of that we had back then, which was, we were on a forum that was just heavily moderated, had a lot of advertisements on it. Everything was kind of focused around everyone play nice, be good, don't say this, don't say that, because that's what the advertisers were demanding, right? And, when I called you, I said, hey, Jesse, we've kind of mentioned this to the ownership over there, but they're just not taking it. They're not getting it, and what we have, what I'm seeing is an audience of, these are guys, right? These are guys that love to go to deer camp. They love to have fun. They love to tell it like it is. And they're kind of tired of it. So I think we can make the better mousetrap, if that makes sense. And really, we struggled to get it off the ground there at first, learning the technology. I think the real inspiration was, when we brought it to that ownership, that owner said, hey, buddy, you think you can do a better job? Go do it.
That's right.
Well, did it.
Go.
And, and that makes me immensely happy every day. And, but to say that, and a lot of guys tell us all the time, they say, hey, look what you guys did. You ought to be proud of this. And I tell them all the time, look, this has nothing to do with us, right? Without the members, without those guys that came over, the guys that joined, the guys that are there every day, that are joining in those conversations, it would just be a place of wasted space on the internet. Yep. So, when those guys came over, and the wealth of information, the ability for individuals to be able to share what they want to share, and to kind of kick back and have a little BS session too. We don't moderate it. I think over the years, there's been only a few instances where we've ever had to ban anyone off the website,
right?
Which is unheard of online.
Yeah. Nope.
And it's kind of self-moderated right now. that goes both ways. You get guys that come and kick the door in like the Kool-Aid man and think they're going to show their butt, and the membership deals with it pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. So that's always great. But back to the core of it, starting TheOhioOutdoors.com, really through my life, the individuals that I've met, all of the other friends, has been a blessing. I haven't gained friends, I've gained family. Yep. And that's really what it means to me. And we transformed that over those years. 10 years ago or so, Facebook was barely in its infancy. I think there was no Instagram, there was no Twitter, none of that existed. So we've seen a shift from the online information of forums into more, virtual video as well as audio through the podcast realm. And, we feel that we have a wealth of information that we want to kind of get out of text and bring into audio so that everybody with their busy lives can go ahead and partake in that. And we also have a lot of members with a lot of wisdom that we kind of want to showcase and have them on. You want to talk about their stories. We've
Right.
read some doozies over the years. And that's really what I want to kind of lay down and get on the audio piece. So maiden episode here, episode number 1, maybe a little rough, right? Neither of us are quite used to this, but stick with us. If you're listening, there's a lot of good stuff to come, a lot of good stories to hear.
Yeah. And no, it was a slow burn out of the gate in August of 2010, even though a lot of us had been around the forums for a long time. I started 2004. So I sort of had a feel for what is a forum and what takes place on a forum. But when you're building a new constituent space, and people really, one of my favorite adages came from a guy I worked with, and it kind of has to do with being new and also being familiar with items. And his example was, if you got 2 horses in a corral and they've been there for a while, and you bring in a new horse and you turn it loose, that horse runs crazy and runs around the outside, bucking, going crazy. And the other 2 horses will just stand there and look at him and think, what the hell's wrong with this guy? And then eventually he just kind of gets it out of his system and winds down and goes to the middle of the corral and hangs out and in a normal manner with the other 2 horses after he's got it out of his system. And I think we have that with new members today, but we had that kind of out of the gate. It took us a while to get it out of our system, particularly the unmoderated approach. And, we've settled into that. The self-moderation component is if you ask me what's the most amazing part of this, it is that component, is that we sort of, some days it is the inmates running the asylum, but at the same time, if you can hang, pay your dues, and maybe if you do get a little sideways and you get put back in your spot, if you can ride that out, you'll be better for it in the long run.
Oh, absolutely. And we've seen that, time and time again. And to say all of that, we're not saying that, people should be shy, right?
Right.
It just depends on everyone's personality. I mean, we've seen guys come in the door recently, a guy from New Jersey talking about buying coyote pelts. I mean, kick the front door open.
Yep.
Man. And the response was in kind. And, we have guys that come on there and ask a simple question or say hello.
Yep.
Best way to do it, just say, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I do. Here's the question I want. And time and time again, I've seen just page after page of people being helpful. And that's not only just questions about bows or anything else, but even, hey, for out-of-staters that say, I'm coming to hunt Wayne National Forest. I've never been there before. I'm not trying to take anybody's spot, but I'm just trying to get a guess for what I'm facing. Tons of information. Everybody's very willing to help. You don't get into a lot of that bashing that you see in other places.
I think we're the most non-resident friendly forum that that I've navigated across, from some of the bigger, global type of archery forums to down to sort of the same sort of niche style forums that we have that are state-based. It can be hard to hang if you're non-resident, but we have a lot of guys that participate that are not Ohio residents.
Yeah. Long-term members, that are not Ohio residents, guys out of, Jersey, seen guys out of Wisconsin, Texas. We had guys out of Florida. I mean, and these are guys that show up every day in the off season, right? Post, right? Not just, come sniffing around September timeframe. These are, good quality long-term members. And, as over the years, right, we've seen that shift away from, the online forums a little bit with traffic and membership over to things like Facebook groups, right? Because you can create those groups in Facebook. And then, there's Instagram and Twitter and all of that, but mostly it's the Facebook groups. And, as owners, you and I have often gone to those groups and said, man, if we're hemorrhaging traffic, to these groups, what can we do to attract membership, to get people back to the site, to get them participating? Let me go see what's holding these people's interest, right? Why are they participating in those groups? And 5 minutes into scrolling through some of those posts, I'm just like, you keep them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Keep them, buddy. Yep. I don't want them, we don't want them because 9 times out of 10, it just a downward spiral. And not the type of base, that you want around a lot of times, but, I think that's what's great about us too, because those members that we do have, and there are quite a few, a lot of them, it's just good quality information. Nobody's going to run you, in a gar hole and tell you, stuff that's not really true.
Right.
and I've seen everything from, stocks to plumbing questions
Yep.
to, truck repair questions, heating and cooling. I mean, if you've got a question, buddy, one of those guys, probably has an answer for you.
That's always
Um,
my way of explaining what this is to people. Though, what's a forum if they don't have any familiarity with it, or if they don't necessarily understand that style of information sharing and communication. I say, well, at our core, we're a hunting forum. That's what we were formed for, is the love of the outdoors. But man, the type of information and the caliber, the high quality information that gets exchanged, there are days where more of that information is not hunting related. Like you said, it's stocks, it's fixing your truck, it's plumbing. If you have a question, this is what I tell people all the time when I'm explaining it. If you have a question about something, someone on the forum can give you a good quality answer in pretty short order. And it's not
yep.
just a regurgitation of Wikipedia or Google. It's coming from experience. They've done this and they can help walk you through it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that time and time again. And they're also the same when it comes to hunting, right? Resourceful, observant, great guys, great woodsmen that have been out there and done that. So when someone asks a question about, hey, I've got this buck, here's what I think is going on, not sure. There's tons of experience for those guys to also say, yeah, I saw one back in 2009 that did something similar to this. And while they're not always the same,
Right.
here's maybe something you haven't thought of. And, pardon me, a classic example of that is a good friend of mine, Alex, years ago, was hunting a piece of property, and a small 30-acre woods, and it had a slammer of a deer in there. I think 170, somewhere in there. And this deer was holed up in that property, real thick honeysuckle, that type stuff. And he couldn't figure it out because he had the deer on camera, and it would come down to a bait pile that he had there. And he said, I'm going to slip in there and I'm going to get a hold of this deer, and he would slip in the evening time. That deer's been there 3 evenings in a row, and climb up in his stand, and he would sit there and wait, nothing. He would get out of his stand, leave. 15 minutes later, that deer would show up. And it was, and he was thinking about it. He said, man, I'm being quiet. I'm slipping in there super quiet. He's not hearing anything. I don't understand it. And, through conversation after he called me, at the time, Alex had a big old black truck with a stack in the bed of it. And I could hear him coming literally 3/4 of a mile away down the road. And he would park by the farmhouse, which was way across the field, and I theorized, I said, Alex, I think that deer hears you coming, your truck. He knows, he's been conditioned to know when you're, dropping bait, you're dropping corn. He hears that truck pull up. He hears that truck stop. You end up back in the woods, 10, 15 minutes later, here's the corn getting dumped out, all of this type of stuff. And then, 10, 15 minutes later, here's that big diesel truck fire back up, and off you go down the road.
Yep.
And I think he's figured out a pattern, right? So on the days that you go out there to hunt, he's realized, I haven't heard that truck leave yet. But when you get down and leave,
Yep.
then he realizes he's safe. I said, here's what you can do. Go out there, have somebody else drive your truck, right? Wait 10, 15 minutes while you go and get in your stand, and then have them drive off. And he opted for another route, which was he parked way down the road and drove his side-by-side, literally put his side-by-side on a trailer, parked at a buddy's house a mile down the road, and then rode his side-by-side to the farmhouse. And he shot that deer that night.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. But the ability to have a forum or a group of guys to loop that back in, that you can call and say, man, I don't know what's going on. I'm getting my butt kicked, and to have other people that can say, maybe this, maybe that, things you never thought of. That's really where the beauty shines. And I think that's really what we want to bring to the podcast when we get all of these members on to talk through, hunts that they've had. Yeah, I think it's going to be great.
I agree. Yeah, no, the ability to solicit other opinions, and we joke sometimes that this is the worst business model ever, because we never had a business plan. You go down to the old vision and mission statement; those aren't really exist. But we talked about, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, it's the quality exchange of quality information amongst quality people. And those three things coming together give you the scenario where somebody thinking outside the box gets Alex on a deer. Or I think one of my favorite topics is the archery tuning tips and tricks, or whatever we call that thread there. we're putting high quality information into one source. And yeah, you can go find that anywhere. Hot topic this week has been Ranch Fairy and all the celebration of high FOC and heavy arrows. You can go find that, and you watch those videos, and I've taken that in. But when you come to the forum and you start having that conversation, which we've had here lately, and someone like a Milo weighs in, who's an actual engineer, by the way. So it's not just a guy that's a top shelf archer and has been for decades, but he's also an engineer. So he understands the physics behind why this works and why it doesn't work. And he's not trying to sell you anything. He doesn't have a sharpening kit. He's not trying to tell you prefab arrows. This is just a guy that's going to tell you how it is and why it is in a way that you can take to the bank and learn from that. So if you're trying to make heads or tails of what you've seen on YouTube and a guy like Ranch Fairy, which, I love him, right? He's got a style and he's got a flair. People are buying into that. And there's probably far more good coming from that style and that sales pitch than there is the other way around. But someone like a Mile just sets you straight, and you can take that to the bank, and that's something that you can walk away and put in your hip pocket. And he's always been keen on paying it forward, and that's why he shares the type of information the way he does, is because he wants you to take that forward in the field, be successful, and then give that to the next person.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only tell you, but show you. Many times I've seen him sit down with a pen and paper and draw out a diagram. He said, let's do the math, right? You want to look at kinetic energy, you want to look at FOC, right? Yep. Let's look at it versus feet per second, right? And, do the math out. And then you sit there saying, well, holy crap, that doesn't make physical sense, right? Or it does up to a point. In archery, right? We've always, and some of this in the industry, we always want to push the extremes, push the extremes. Well, sometimes that's not always the best. Like an extreme FOC is not going to, get you anywhere, but an arrow in the dirt, there's a sweet spot, and finding that sweet spot is what matters. And that, that doesn't even apply, it would only apply, I should say, to Milo, but also, trad guys, Jägermeister on the forum, wealth of research information there around. This is a guy that, he actually went to Three Rivers Archery, bought the, arrow test kit, right? Bought the test kit of different points, sat there, and shot arrows and shaved an eighth of an inch off the front, an eighth of an inch off the back, and took them outside and went through that extremely painful process to get an arrow that flies. And, we saw the results of that at the last camp out last summer. You and I are sitting there lined up shooting, what was it, 120 yards across a lake. And, we're all cheering because we're getting close to the bag target, and he's flinging them with a trad bow and coming within 5 feet.
Right. Yeah.
That, to me, that's a bullseye, man.
Amazing.
You nailed it. Amazing. So he's just not, talking crap. Guys know what they're talking about.
Right. Well, and it's not all been, we had our 4th birthday party for my youngest today, and it was a unicorn rainbow theme, right? It's not all been unicorns and rainbows here. We've had some missteps along the way, particularly with members who early in the game, very skilled, very knowledgeable, but didn't want to share information. None. And at some point, that was the impetus for this forum. It's going to be the impetus for this podcast. It's the free sharing of information. And we're now fully entrenched in the area of free information, right? Google and everything else that's out there. There are no trade secrets anymore. So to put yourself on a pedestal and just hold that in here and say, and I will never forget these words shared to me by an early member of the forum when we kind of got a little crossways over this about, well, I've worked so hard to gather this information. Why should I give it away for free? Well, that's a really stingy way of looking at this love of the outdoors that we all have and share. It's what brings us together. We're here. We call it a brotherhood. That we mean that. Like you said earlier, we've walked away with family. I don't have a biological brother. The brothers I have came through the relationships that were forged here. And a lot of those relationships were built on the back of just exchanging information with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And the individual you're speaking of, very successful hunter, very smart. Nobody can knock anything away from him for that, right? Proof's in the pudding.
Yep.
Not only him, but also, friends, that he's been with. But, it, and I'm not just saying him, right? So, if he hears this, don't think I'm just picking on him. But um, the types of members that we've had, you mentioned earlier, there have been a few that show up and throw up the big peacock fan
Mhm.
and this, and hey, that's great. Let's hear about it, man. What do you know? What can you do to help
Right.
other people, right? And that, as you mentioned, that attitude of, man, it took me a long time to learn this. Why should I give it away? Well, number one, because these people aren't hunting where you hunt,
Yep.
right? It's not going to impact you at all. Not taking a dollar out of your pocket,
Yep.
So they're going to go to their own places where they hunt. They're going to try to use that information to kill a buck that you are never going to see. So
Exactly.
at the end of the day, what does it matter?
Right.
And yeah, so individuals that open up and share that information, if you look back through the number of individuals, very few that we've had an issue with that has since moved on. That was the primary cause,
Mhm.
was, the attitude of, hey, look at me, I'm special, but I'm not going to tell you anything.
Right.
I want to keep that mystery so that you think I'm cool, right? You think I'm this awesome person, look up to me or whatever else. Buddy, yeah, nobody's going to do that.
Right. No,
Nobody's going to do it.
not in this group.
No, not at all. So,
Well, and I take that personal because I don't, it's not, I've mellowed out over the years, but very early on, I took that very personal because I'm largely self-taught. I grew up in a hunting family, but it wasn't something that my dad necessarily, he just did it because his brothers did it, right? It was something to do. And so I learned some of the basics about, walking through the woods and trying to be quiet and sitting still, etc. But I didn't learn any detail from my father when it came to
yeah.
hunting. And so when I rolled around the forums in 2004, what I had been in the ripe old age of 22, I was 4 years into being a bow hunter at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know my ass from a hole in the ground in terms of what I was really truly doing. Terms like FOC and even understanding what my arrow weighed in general was
Yeah.
years away. I mean, quite literally years away for me to adapt to that. And the only reason I got to that point was because I was on the forum, because I was putting myself out there, asking questions, and just kind of embracing the newbie position that I was in. And, asking questions, getting high quality feedback from folks like Milo, who took me under his wing very early on. And so it was critical to my development, to what's now become a full-fledged passion, right? As evidenced by the fact that we own a forum together. And now we're launching a podcast about it. That came from being on a forum and having other individuals openly share information with me. And so I took it a little personal when, guys want to come in and want the praise, but at the same time that they don't want to put a little skin in the game and help somebody along the way. And like you said, the particular example we're talking about, lots of opportunity, lots of examples where this individual did help somebody.
Yeah.
But it wasn't on the forum.
Right.
It was always kind of closed. And so that was, I took that kind of personal, and I still look at it that way. When guys come up and want to take, I have a little trouble swallowing that, because the idea here is that you're going to take a little and you're going to give a little.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same, Jesse, I grew up in the state of Mississippi. My father didn't hunt. My grandfather hunted squirrels. That was about it. They grew up in a time where there weren't a lot of deer. My dad didn't hunt. So self-taught, right? I mean, my first deer was shot kind of with my uncle, but that was very well taken care of, right? I didn't have to do a whole lot, sat in a shooting house, pulled the trigger type deal. But the first deer I shot on my own, I can remember it just kind of the outdoors always lit a passion in me. And, I can remember hunting by myself in the woods when my shotgun was a little taller than I was, and that's when I shot my first deer on my own. It was a really foggy morning in Mississippi, and I was walking down an old logging road, and these two deer jumped across it, and I got ready, and the third one jumped, and I shot. And it's buckshot's legal here in Mississippi, and so I hit him, and I followed him up, and I found the first deer that I'd ever shot on my own. I was excited, and I ran home, and I grabbed my grandfather and my dad, and we all went out there to look at it. And I can remember the three of us standing there, and them two like scratching their head like, the heck are we going to do with that? Like, what do we do now? Because they didn't know,
Right.
And then the transition to, after I got out of the military and I moved to Ohio, Ohio, totally foreign to me, right? Big
Yep.
ag fields up where I live, mile and a half across on these bean fields. And I can remember saying, okay, now, I'm going to get back into hunting. Didn't know anybody in the state, nobody else that hunted. I picked up a piece of property that I could hunt. And I remember driving out there preseason on a bean field and putting up the binoculars and looking at a buck that was almost probably 3/4 of a mile across this bean field. And on the backside was just a strip of fence row. And I knew at the time Ohio had shotgun, muzzleloader, right? You only get like a week of that, and
Yep.
then bow season. And I hadn't hunted with a bow in a while. And I remember looking at that deer going, now, how in the heck am I going to kill that deer with a bow? This seems impossible. Blew
Yep.
my mind, right? You can't do that. I'm used to growing up hunting, with a high power 7 mag. I can do that.
Right. Right.
But a bow, come on now.
Yep.
And that's whenever I started looking for that information, and then years later we started the forum, but self-taught,
Yep.
same as you,
Yep.
and I think that's critical. And that's why really to roll into the podcast format, even to get it out there on, YouTube, I think it's perfect.
Yep. I agree. I mean, we talked about this a little bit when we were sort of setting the stage for the podcast. That's where the information's at right now. Video form, podcast form. So this is just a natural evolution in what we started to do 10 years ago, and just the exchange of that quality information, and just a different way to take it in. And sometimes it's a little easier to listen to this on the way to work than it is to sit down and read a lengthy post. I've been more than guilty, right? My reputation's for being a little long-winded. I'm probably not as bad as I used to be
Same
when
here.
I was younger, but it can get there.
Right.
Sometimes you just want to take it in a different style. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was, what's in a screen name? You go by Jack Lope. I go by Bowhunter 1023. Mine's a little less illustrious there. Obviously my favorite numbers are tagged on there, and I consider myself a bow hunter, but guys always, we got some cool names guys pick out. So, how was it that you landed on Jack Lope?
Yeah, it dates back to that previous forum that we spoke of earlier. And the Kool-Aid man that comes in the door and kind of kicks the door open, right? So a younger Joe was that guy. And
yes.
I love trolling, right? I liked it, and
I can attest to this.
Fun, and still participate, when deserving from time to time.
Yep.
But yeah, so I joined and I had a screen name there, and ended up getting my butt banned off that website.
Yep.
And so I gave it a couple of days and rejoined, and they figured that out and banned me again, So I think the third time or fourth time, sometime I figured it out. So I bounced off of a VPN in Singapore, created another account so he couldn't track the IP address. And I was thinking, what name should I use? And then I remembered back the America's Funniest Home Videos. Remember the little jackalope, and he was always fast as fast could be. You'll never catch me, right?
Yep.
Was his
Beautiful.
Right. So the troll in me couldn't resist not leaving a breadcrumb.
Yeah.
But so I got in there, and that just kind of stuck. It's been mutilated into other names by some over time, right? We're not going to say here, but and it just kind of stuck from there.
And that's a good example of why Joe's the IT expertise behind all this, because I've never once in my life been able to figure out how to bounce something off of something in Singapore and get it back to functionality. So
yeah. So, and now it's actually dealing with members from Singapore that want to post spam every day, but we'll get them. So
I just had one of those last week, I think, right?
Yeah, just a little bit of pain, right? A little bit of payment. So while he couldn't, block me, and it was a pain in the butt, I'm struggling to block, spam, and it's a pain in the butt from Singapore. So yeah, but
I think the forums, there's almost always a forum out there for everything. Whether, I know when I bought my truck back in September, you're on the Ford enthusiast forum and you're looking for specific answers. And that's one of the things that I find a lot. Forums aren't for everybody, but when you're trying to find very specific information, I think that's where forums shine a lot. One of the things that comes to mind right now is Albert's no seed. What is it? I forget exactly what it is. It's his no-till
Right.
food plot
Mhm.
thread. That thing's just chock full of, I mean, kudos to him for doing all the hard work, but chances are you go to Google and you type in something super specific about, soil composition as it relates to food plots, that's going to show up. We have some very specific conversations about arrows and
Yep.
rifle ammunition, et cetera. In your opinion, what do you think the future of forums is in light of, kind of the Instagrams and the Twitters? And we've kind of taken a back
Yeah.
seat to all that, but I still think
Yeah.
there's a lot of value there. And
No.
we took over a very small niche in terms of Ohio hunting forums, but I still see a bright future in front of us.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And really, it's about quality information, right? That's at the end of the day, that's where a forum is going to live or die when it comes to content. We have a lot of content every day where, we're all good friends, we're all good guys, and we love to joke and have fun. But we also have those no-till food plot threads, arrow tuning. We have a lengthy thread about COVID, right?
Right.
And there's some really good information in there around the how contagious it is, actual numbers from all over the world, CDC data, news articles. This isn't just what Facebook wants you to see, doesn't want you to see,
Yep.
or blocks you, right? Give you the information everybody can take with it from what they do. The future of forums, though, is really going to be based around content. With that shift to the Facebooks and the Instagram, and Twitter, it's kind of created amongst society an instant gratification, right? That's what we're looking for. Most of it is mind numbing. You're scrolling through, just kind of massively intaking all of this information. But when it comes to quality things, it's always very short. You see a 10-second video, a 15-second video, things like that. That's about it. That's about all anybody's going to sit there and watch, and then they're just going to roll right through. And you can't talk about something like, frost seeding or no-till food plots in 15 seconds. You just can't do it. But here's the trouble with that. So your average guy says, well, I'm not going to find that information on Facebook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Google or Yahoo or any other search engine. I'm going to type in no-till food plot planning. Well, after you scroll through the first 3 pages that are nothing but guys selling seed,
Yep.
right, or other types of things, you might find some information there. So anymore, it's not what you search for, it's how you search for it.
Yep.
So oftentimes, if I'm looking for that, right, at the end of that, when I go to Google and type in, no-till food plot, put in quotes at the end the word forum, right? And what that's going to give you is everybody on every forum that's talked about or started a thread on no-till food plots. And what you're going to get is firsthand information. You're going to get guys that have been out there, that have done it, that have succeeded at it, that have failed at it, the things that they did, right? And that's even better in a lot of ways than articles that you're going to see on any of the big name websites, right? So you get to go like Bow Hunting Mag or Field and Stream. I don't know if we can throw names out there, but even if we can't. But what you have there, a lot of times those individuals are beheld as sponsors, right? So you see that a lot in the gun industry. You want to go read a review about Ruger's brand new rifle, you're not going to get one of those magazine guys talking crap. Just isn't going to happen. Where us, with our product here, what we've kind of created with two, when you go there, you'll notice there's no advertisers.
Right.
We've tried it a couple of times, and back and forth. And we've had, a pretty well-known mineral guy, right, approached us some years back and said, hey, I want to ship your guys a bunch of these minerals, you can promote it on the website.
Yep.
And I said, well, your first part, right? You can ship us a bunch of minerals. We'll put them out in the woods. We'll have members put out there. You're going to get an honest opinion, right? Yep. We're gonna put them out there, man. If this stuff is awesome, like you say it is, and then that's great. If I put it out there and it's junk, buddy, it's junk, right? I mean, and don't think I'm gonna come to you and say, hey, man, this stuff, okay, I'll talk it up, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we don't want our members to spend their hard-earned money on snake oil in a bag just because it's got a bunch of salt in it.
Yep.
And it turns out, went out there, you had some of that stuff. I did, about 4 or 5 other members. And we talked amongst ourselves and said, hey, anybody getting any action from this stuff? And my personal experience, I took it out to a well-established mineral site. I dumped it right beside it, just same camera view.
Yep.
And I gave it weeks, and the deer would show up and they would still hit those regular minerals right there, which was, mostly just a salt lick. And
Right.
all of this other stuff with this bone growing protein, this omega, blah, blah, blahs.
Yep.
It was pretty good at growing clover. That's
Yeah.
about it.
Right.
Because grass
Mold
will
in
grow
my
up through
case.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it went back and told that guy, like, man, I don't know, dude, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the stuff, right? But good luck to you, because you are in Ohio business and we want to see you do well. But at the end of the day, we can't rightfully just go and tell everybody, hey, everybody go buy this stuff. It's the awesome stuff in the world. There's some ethics there and we're just not going to cross that line.
Nope.
Unfortunately, you see that a lot in this industry.
Yep.
And
we did it with the
kind of
trail
loop
cam.
that back. Yeah. With the trail cam. I mean, we had a really sweet deal with a trail cam manufacturer that, and this isn't to say anything about them today, because I think a lot of guys have some products from them today that they absolutely love. But at the time, they're a relatively new camera company, been on the market 4 or 5 years, had a really sweet, dealership deal with them. I think we sold a couple hundred of them.
Yep.
And they started coming up lame pretty quick. Some of them did within weeks, months, well within the first year. And I started talking to the guy, and I said, hey man, these, I'm sending cameras back to you. Members are sending cameras back to you. I'm not looking to make any deal. We passed the deal on to the members, right? So we got 25% off the price of the camera at wholesale. We sold it to everybody on the forum at 25% off retail, didn't make a dime on the things. Just because we wanted to pass that on to our members. Again, not looking to make money. But I went back to him and I said, man, this thing isn't good. And then the relationship started to sour a little bit, right?
Yep. That's right.
He would take a week or more to respond to stuff, and I'd try to call him. He was always out of the office and everything else. And hey, we're done, buddy.
Yep.
We're done. So that ended that deal with them. I'm not going to go on the forum and you or anybody else and say, guys, you should really get these cameras. We're going to give you a 10% promo, knowing we're pocketing 15%.
Yep.
And pitching junk that's going to be dead on them in 6 months. So when you look at the Ohio Outdoors, to loop it back into what you were saying, you're getting quality information that is not biased.
Right.
There are no sponsors that are kicking our door in going, you better play nice or send me my money back. Yep. Right. Because we've never cashed their check.
Yep.
And you won't find that across a lot of forums. Our what used to be competitor in the state of Ohio, you'll count 15 to 16 ads across, a single page over there. It's crazy. Quality information, that's where it's at. Quality, unbiased information. And you're not going to get that on the Facebook or Instagram.
No, and we have so many great discussions about, I think about the packs, right? Right now, that's sort of the hot topic with what Kramer bought. I think he ended up with the KUIU pack, right? And so there's, something like a backpack. We have guys that are using all different sorts. Same thing with camouflage and clothing companies. I don't know why we'd ever want to pigeonhole ourselves to one particular brand, because we have such a diverse set of experiences, a diverse application of this love of the outdoors, from guys that ice fish to trapping to straight bow hunting, and they're doing it all over the country. And guys are doing it with every brand under the sun right now. And if it works for you, then that's all we want is for it to work for you and feel like you got value. So, I think a lot of times it maybe guys wonder why they don't have sponsors. Well, because we don't want to owe anybody anything. And in the two cases where we've tried it, quite frankly, it didn't really go that well, because neither of the products lived up to the hype that we were supposed to dole out. Per your point, we're not going to dole that out. And so we, at this point, there's so much good information out there across a multitude of types of equipment and brands that if you haven't, if you're just wondering, man, I see these KUIU packs, I'd like to know something about it. Well, if you hop on our forum, guess what? You're going to get a really high quality review right now from a guy that just spent hard-earned money on it and seems to be loving it.
Yeah, absolutely. And other packs too, right? I mean, you've got everything down, to the Redhead Packs guy bought at Bass Pro that
Yep.
says, hey, I bought this, they're notoriously kind of middle of the line type stuff, but I really like it. The zippers have held up, the buckles have held up, for my purpose, what I use it for, it's really, it suits the bill.
Yep.
So yeah, lots of great information there.
I agree. Well, man, this has been fun. I think it makes a good little pilot episode.
Yeah.
I don't want to steal your thunder on the questions when we talked about, kind of what are the couple takeaways from these stories that guys can pass on. But I think that it would be prudent for us to maybe just one takeaway from our experiences on the forum and kind of why it's something we choose to continue to do, because you do more of the work than I do, but it's work for both of us, and we still get all the enjoyment. But what is the one thing that's really for the last decade that's been driven home to you about all of this?
Well, I think in a lot of ways it has very much restored my faith in humanity. Keeps me grounded, right? Yep. To know a bunch of guys that, what you see in the news every day, and you read across articles or you look on, the Facebook and stuff like that. But to know that there's a group of guys out there that are just like you, right? Yep. These people are fathers, they're hardworking men. They change their own oil in their truck. They get out there in the woods and they get it done. And you know what? They're honest, right? And these aren't guys that, if they think you're screwing up, they're going to look you in the eye and go, oh yeah, okay, man, and let you go off and do it. It might not be something you want to hear sometimes, but they're probably going to call you or pull you off and say, man, I don't know about all that, dude. I think you might be heading down a bad road.
Yep.
And they're not going to put their foot on your throat and stop you from doing it. If you want to go do it, you do it. And when you screw it up, they're going to be there when you get back going, what do you need? I'm going to pick you up. Yep. Right. And that's really my takeaway from it all of these times, is not the information, because we've been blessed with a lot of information that guys have given us, but the brotherhood of people, guys that, the old proverbial will hop in the truck and come, pull you out of a ditch in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. They have, right? I mean,
yes.
Guys,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's not, fake news, right? I mean, it happens all the time. I've seen incredible acts of kindness, yep. From a family perspective too. And to me, that is worth every bit of it, yep. Right there. So yeah.
I agree. Your point about keeping you grounded. I said it earlier, I don't have a biological brother. I don't have a big circle of friends here locally. My circle of friends are my brothers from the Ohio Outdoors. And it seems like, every so often somebody else sort of, they've been there a while and they start to open up and you learn more about them. And all of a sudden they're now, been welcomed into the circle. And, I saw a point where around that 7 or 8 year mark, there were relationships that were formed sort of kind of off over, in their geographical area, guys yep. that met on the forum, but they all kind of live close together. And so now they're able to get together kind of frequently. And now, those are lifelong friends and their families hang out and they do things together.
Right.
To me, that has been one of the most satisfying things through this whole venture, is just watching those relationships get formed. And yes, we get to take advantage of those, ourselves. We've developed those relationships. We've got those friends, but to watch other guys be able to kind of go do their thing on the side in their neighborhood with relationships that were forged here on the forum, that's been super special to me. Yep. The acts of kindness, like you said, and knowing that, if I have a short list of people I could pick up the phone and call when what's hitting the fan, and man, a lot of those are my two brothers that I can count on, whether, I need, I got a water line leak in my house or I really got something bad going on. Those calls are from my brothers on the forum. So the relationships that you think it's so impersonal, my wife wants to joke about my internet boyfriends, right? But it seems counterintuitive, right? You're on the internet, and what's this nameless, faceless thing, this forum that you got to screen? It's not even your real name. How are you going to forge relationships? Right. I can tell you right now, don't let that get in the way of joining. Jump in, introduce yourself, say who you are, what it is you like to do, and you will absolutely be amazed at the type of people that are there, the type of information you get, but more importantly than anything, the relationships that you can forge on something like a forum.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree, Jesse. And to take that into, we've been doing a kind of a summer gathering for a long time, summer archery shoot. Then we have a fall gathering, where guys show up and, there's some squirrel hunting, there's some deer hunting, there's some beer hunting in the cooler, right? Kind
Yep.
of a virtual deer camp there in the fall. And, that's transitioned too into, for a little while there, we did a muzzleloader hunt in late winter, and then to open it up in May to kind of a family camp out, which I think was a great idea that one of our members had, and said, hey, us guys, we're always getting together. We're always going out, 2, 3 times a year and meeting up somewhere. And the proverbial, the wife is like, hey, going to meet your internet boyfriends.
Yeah.
But to bring them into that and then say, hey, well, once a year we're going to have a family camp out, right?
Yep.
Where, bring the wife, bring the kids. The hunt, the beer, and the coolers kept to a minimum, and it's all about kids fishing derbies and cooking food and just having a great relaxing time, so that not only can, two guys that have known each other for a while form that bond, but then also their wives. And I've
Yep.
seen that happen now, where there are wives who are friends,
Yep.
right? And the guys are benefiting from it, because they're end up at each other's house every weekend or every other
Yep.
weekend, having a good time. And those are special because they form lifelong bonds, that will exist long after, the OhioOutdoors.com may be gone, or
Right.
whenever that happens a long time in the future. Heaven forbid it doesn't. But
Right.
if that forum was to cease to exist tomorrow, there are friends that would last, that would last longer than that. So
Agreed.
to bring that full circle, with this podcast, what I think both you and I have talked about, we're really hoping to do, is to bring some of those people on here to share stories about hunts that they've had, things that they've learned, the ones that got away and the ones that were successful, and just tell their story. I think that would be a great thing to hear.
Yep. Get an outlet for it. So, all right, partner, I appreciate it. For those of you that want to find the forum, again, it is TheOhioOutdoors.com. You can find us at TheOhioOutdoors on Facebook and Instagram. And we will be releasing these podcasts hopefully on a bi-weekly rotation. You're going to be able to get the YouTube version, and then you'll be able to find the audio where all popular podcasts can be found. So we appreciate you joining us for episode 1, and we are officially underway. Thank y'all.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother.